Kindness does not automatically make you a noble person. And above all, it does not protect you. Immediately erase from your mind this naive idea that being always understanding, always patient, always conciliatory guarantees you peace and harmony. It is a beautiful story that society likes to tell to keep people docile. But in reality, poorly mastered kindness can become one of the most effective weapons against you. You have often been taught that you must be kind to everyone, that you must avoid conflicts, that you must understand, forgive, give a second chance, then a third. You have been taught that firmness is harsh, that cunning is immoral, and that strategy is suspicious. Yet, if you carefully observe human dynamics, you will notice something strange. Overly kind individuals are rarely the ones who dominate the situation. The reason is simple. Men observe, they test, they experiment, they unconsciously seek the limits of others. And when someone shows boundless kindness, some see it as a quality, but others see it as an opportunity. This is exactly what Niccolò Machiavelli already understood. In The Prince, he explains that men are guided by their interests, their fears, and their ambitions. They admire virtue, but they exploit weakness. A naive kindness, therefore, becomes a signal. It indicates to those who know how to read behaviors that you will hesitate to punish, that you will seek to avoid confrontations, and that you will sometimes sacrifice your interest to preserve peace. This is where the trap begins. Because kindness can destroy in several ways. The first way is almost invisible at first, and yet it is formidable. Kindness can prevent you from punishing when necessary, not because you do not see the problem, but because you hesitate to act. You tell yourself that maybe it is not that serious. You tell yourself that the person might be going through a bad patch. You prefer to understand rather than to correct. And little by little, this leniency becomes a habit. In any human group, whether it is a circle of friends, a work team, or an entire organization, rules only hold up thanks to consequences. It is not the written rule that creates order. It is the certainty that someone will enforce this rule if it is crossed. When consequences disappear, order begins to crack. Let us imagine a very simple scene in a company. A manager notices that an employee often arrives late. The first time, he says nothing. He shows himself to be understanding. He thinks that this can happen to anyone. The second time, he smiles and simply tells him to be careful. The third time, he listens to an excuse and lets it slide again. In his mind, he is acting with humanity. He wants to be fair, understanding, kind, but the others are observing. The colleagues notice that the lateness provokes no serious reaction. They understand there is no real limit. So some of them also begin to relax their discipline. It is not necessarily out of malice. It is simply human nature. When a border is not guarded, it recedes. Very quickly, what was an exception becomes a habit. Lateness multiplies. Excuses become automatic. The manager then begins to feel frustrated. He wonders why no one respects the rules. Yet, the problem was not the rule. The problem was the lack of reaction. The one who wanted to be appreciated by everyone suddenly discovers an unpleasant truth. Kindness without firmness does not create respect. It creates permissiveness. We find this phenomenon in many social situations. A friend always tolerates little mockeries directed at him to avoid conflict. At first, the others joke lightly. Then the jokes become heavier. No one stops because no one sees a limit. The one who wanted to preserve harmony progressively becomes the easy target of the group. This mechanism is profoundly human. Individuals test boundaries. They observe how far they can go. When a person shows that they will never punish, they involuntarily send a signal. This signal says, there is no real risk. This is precisely what Niccolò Machiavelli already understood. In his vision of human relations, permanent leniency can sometimes produce more disorder than occasional firmness. A clear sanction at the right time stabilizes a group. Repeated leniency weakens it. Kindness then becomes a trap for the one who practices it without strategy. By dint of wanting to avoid tensions, he allows a climate to settle in where everyone pushes the limits a little further. And when he finally decides to react, it is often too late. The habits are already established. This paradox is difficult for many people to accept. We would like to believe that goodness is enough to organize a human group. But history, politics, and even daily life show something else. A respected authority combines two things: the ability to be fair and the ability to be firm when necessary. True wisdom is therefore not to abandon kindness. It consists in not letting it replace responsibility. Being able to listen, to understand, and to help is a quality. But knowing how to say stop, knowing how to correct, knowing how to recall a limit is sometimes what protects the balance of the whole group. The one who always refuses to punish ends up inadvertently punishing everyone, because the disorder he allows to settle in ends up affecting everyone. The second way kindness can destroy you is more sneaky. It attracts opportunists. Not everyone enters a relationship with the idea of cooperating. Some people enter with a silent question in mind: what can I get out of this person? They do not say it openly. They observe. They test. They advance cautiously at first, like someone putting their foot in the water to check the temperature dot. And if they discover that you are naturally helpful, generous with your time, your energy, or your skills, they immediately understand that there is an exploitable resource here. It almost always starts with something very small. A trivial request. A quick favor. A small favor that seems to cost only a few minutes. Could you just take a look at this file? You know more about this than I do. Can you check this? Could you help me for 2 minutes? Nothing dramatic. Nothing that deserves a brutal refusal. You help because you are a decent person. And this is exactly where the mechanism begins. The small favor progressively becomes a habit. The habit becomes an expectation. And the expectation ends up becoming a kind of implicit right. The person comes back to you the following week. Then the week after that. The requests become a little longer, a little more complex. But since you have already accepted the first ones, it becomes psychologically more difficult to refuse the subsequent ones. This phenomenon is very common in the professional world. In almost all companies, there is this extremely kind colleague, the one who agrees to help everyone, the one who stays a little later to finish a collective project, the one who corrects the mistakes of others to prevent teamwork from being delayed, the one who patiently explains what others have not understood. At first, everyone appreciates this person. They are described as indispensable, always available, a really good person. They receive compliments. They are thanked. Their generosity is admired. But observe what happens over time. Very quickly, the exceptional effort becomes the norm. Colleagues begin to consider this help as something natural. They do not thank as much anymore. They simply get used to the fact that this person will be there to fix, correct, explain. And one day, when this person decides not to help as much, the reactions change. The same people who took advantage of their kindness start saying that they have become distant, that they are no longer as cooperative, that they are no longer a team player. What was once a service suddenly becomes an obligation. This is one of the cruelest traps of excessive kindness. It alters the perception of others. Instead of seeing your help as a gift, they end up seeing it as a function. In some cases, it goes even further. Opportunists understand that they can transfer their responsibilities onto you. They take fewer precautions, work less seriously, or discreetly delegate what bothers them. Why? Because they know that at the last moment, you will be there to save the situation. In society in general. This phenomenon also appears in friendly or family relationships. The person who is always available becomes the one who is called to solve problems, lend money, do favors, or manage emergencies. And paradoxically, it is often these people who find themselves the most exhausted, the most solicited, and sometimes the least respected. The reason is simple. A generosity without limits does not always create gratitude. It sometimes creates dependence and exploitation. This is exactly the type of dynamic that realist thinkers like Niccolò Machiavelli had understood a long time ago. Men admire virtue, but they exploit what makes their lives easier. This does not mean that you have to become harsh or selfish. It means that strategic kindness must always be accompanied by one essential thing: visible limits. Without limits, your kindness ceases to be a quality. It becomes a resource that others learn to consume. The third way is more subtle, but also much more dangerous. Excessive kindness often ends up destroying respect. At first, everything seems positive. People say you are pleasant, understanding, easygoing. You are described as someone nice, cool, conciliatory. You avoid tensions, you calm conflicts, you put the harmony of the group before your own comfort. In the moment, this gives the impression of being a rare quality. And indeed, in certain situations, this attitude can create a pleasant climate. But carefully observe what happens over time. Being loved and being respected are two very different things. Many people confuse the two, but human dynamics do not work that way. Affection is often born from ease, comfort, and kindness. Respect, on the other hand, is born from the perception of strength, clear limits, and the ability to say no when necessary. When a person constantly seeks the approval of others, they unconsciously begin to avoid anything that could create tension. They postpone difficult conversations. They hesitate to correct inappropriate behavior. They prefer to compromise rather than impose a limit. They accept a small breach of the rules, then another, then yet another. At first, others simply notice that they are tolerant. Then, progressively, they begin to test the boundaries. A colleague arrives late and offers a quick excuse. The kind person accepts immediately. The following week, the lateness is repeated. Then again. Each time, the reaction remains the same: understanding, leniency, patience. Without realizing it, the message sent to the group becomes very clear. Limits exist, but they are flexible. This is when respect begins to erode. Not brutally, not in a spectacular way. It happens slowly, almost invisibly. People continue to be polite to you. They sometimes even continue to say that you are a good person. But in their real decisions, they cease to consider you as an authority figure. In competitive environments, this phenomenon is even faster. Imagine a team manager who absolutely wants to be liked by his collaborators. He avoids punishing mistakes so as not to create discomfort. He accepts excuses too easily. He takes on responsibilities that should be assumed by others. At first, his team finds him humane. Then some members start to take advantage of this leniency. Deadlines become blurrier, effort decreases, discipline relaxes, and paradoxically, the same team that appreciated his kindness begins to feel a form of silent irritation. Why? Because human beings unconsciously seek clear structures. They respect someone who knows how to set limits more than someone who accepts everything. When these limits disappear, authority dissolves, and with it, credibility. This is exactly the type of mechanism that Niccolò Machiavelli was already describing. He explained that the one who governs cannot seek solely to be loved, because love is unstable. It depends on emotions, circumstances, and the interests of the moment. Respect, on the other hand, rests on the perception of a strength, capable of acting when necessary. This does not mean that one must become harsh or brutal. True intelligence consists in understanding that kindness must be accompanied by clear boundaries. A person can be calm, polite, and even generous, while remaining capable of saying no, of correcting a behavior, and of maintaining a structure. It is this balance that creates lasting respect, because when others understand that your kindness is not a weakness, but a conscious choice, their perception changes immediately. They know that you can be understanding, but also firm. And it is precisely this combination that transforms kindness into true strength. Instead of making it a silent invitation to abuse, the fourth way is more subtle, but also more dangerous. Excessive kindness reveals your psychological limits. People observe much more than you imagine. They watch how you react to small things. Not to major crises, no. To the details. To mundane moments. To those almost insignificant situations that seem too small to deserve a reaction. Someone interrupts you once. You smile and let it go. Someone allows themselves a slightly condescending remark. You pretend not to have noticed it. Someone arrives late to an appointment without really apologizing. You reply that it does not matter. At the time, these gestures seem trivial to you. You tell yourself that you are simply a calm, mature, tolerant person. But for some observers, these moments are information. They note your reactions. They record what you accept without protesting. And the test begins again. The next time, the interruption will be a little longer. The remark will be a little sharper. The lateness will be a little more disrespectful. And each time, the same silent question arises in the other person's mind. How far can we go with you? This process is rarely conscious. It does not look like a strategy planned around a table. It is often instinctive. Human beings naturally explore social limits, just as one tests the solidity of a floor before putting all one's weight on it. If you tolerate a small incivility without saying anything, some people understand that the border is flexible. If you tolerate the next one, they understand that the border is even further away. And thus, step by step, they advance. It is a progressive mechanism, almost imperceptible. A colleague starts by asking you for a small favor. You accept out of kindness. The following week, he asks you for a little more help, then a little more. After a few months, you realize that you are doing part of his work. In a social circle, someone starts by making a slightly mocking joke about you. You laugh with the group so as not to create discomfort. The next time, the joke is a little more pronounced. Then it becomes a habit. In these situations, kindness becomes an involuntary signal. It indicates that you favor harmony over conflict, that you prefer to avoid confrontation, and that you are ready to absorb certain tensions to maintain peace. Some people will respect this attitude, but others will see it as an opportunity. And this is where the mechanism described by Niccolò Machiavelli becomes obvious. Men test power dynamics. They observe reactions. They look for room to maneuver. Every reaction you show becomes strategic information. If you show that certain limits are solid, people quickly learn not to cross them. But if your limits seem blurry, malleable, or non-existent, some will continue to advance until they find the true border. Kindness, in this case, acts as an open map of your psychological territory, and whoever reads this map can know exactly how far they can go with you. A fifth way is that of predictability, an often invisible but terribly effective threat. Imagine a person who, at every affront, every mistake, or every provocation, always responds with leniency. They forgive unconditionally, accept without resistance, understand without judging. Initially, this seems noble, almost reassuring. But quickly, it becomes a pattern that others learn to anticipate. Every action, every reaction, every silence is read like an open book by those who observe. In the corridors of a company or in social circles, observers begin to test the limits. He will forgive again. She will accept as always. He will not fight back, as always. These phrases circulate in the minds of competitors and rivals. And this is exactly where the danger lies. Repeated leniency becomes a strategic card that others use against you. They know exactly when to push, when to betray, when to take advantage of your clemency. Predictability destroys respect before you even realize it. A strategic person, on the contrary, knows how to introduce slight variations, small uncertainties in their responses. They seem lenient, but they are never entirely predictable. A word, a gesture, a silence, all are calculated. Thus, the one who thought they could exploit your kindness finds themselves surprised, hesitant, unable to formulate a clear plan. The blind trust of others then becomes your invisible leverage dot in society as in business. He who is too predictable is exploited. The key is not to stop being kind, but to accompany it with subtle self-mastery and a discreet control of perceptions. Kindness then becomes a veil that hides your real strategy, and predictability becomes a trap that you never allow to close on you. The sixth way in which kindness can destroy you is more insidious. It creates an invisible dependence around you. When you constantly help, when you offer your time, your advice, and your energy without counting, you may not see it, but you are shaping a silent network of dependence. Others end up no longer developing their own abilities because they know they can rely on you. You become the invisible crutch of the group, the one that supports all efforts, absorbs all difficulties, and corrects all mistakes. At first, no one realizes it. Everything seems natural, almost generous. But over time, the burden makes itself felt. Meetings become nightmares, where you carry the weight of decisions alone. Projects fail if you do not intervene, and the responsibilities you thought were shared fall systematically on your shoulders. Soon, you realize that you are doing the work of several people, that your time and energy are being exploited, and that your role as the indispensable nice guy prevents you from progressing, while everyone else advances sheltered by your vigilance. Concrete example. In a company, an overly kind employee always agrees to complete the work of his late colleagues, to correct their mistakes, and to present the group's results to management. At first, he is appreciated, but after 6 months, he discovers that his colleagues no longer take any initiative, that his workload has doubled, and that his own projects are stagnating. What he thought was cooperation has become an invisible prison. His kindness has created a trap where he is indispensable, and yet unable to rise. The seventh way kindness can destroy you lies in the loss of opportunities. Kindness, when poorly mastered, acts as an invisible brake. It pushes you to step back, to yield your place, to hesitate to defend your interest, to not say no when you should. You hold yourself back, not out of a lack of ability, but out of a desire not to offend, not to disturb, not to create tension. And while you step aside to preserve peace, someone else steps forward. They do not hesitate. They assert themselves. They take what you could have obtained in the real world. This simple difference in attitude can be decisive. In a competitive job market, in a collective project, or even in social circles, the one who acts without hesitation captures attention, gets promotions, lands contracts, forges alliances. You, however competent, talented, and well-intentioned, remain on the sidelines invisible because your kindness has taught you to give way. The opportunities that could have been yours pass to someone else, and with them, recognition, power, and influence. Worse still, this posture of stepping back becomes a habit. The more you yield, the more natural it becomes for you to step aside, to wait, to let opportunities pass. And the more you step aside, the more those who have understood the mechanics of human relations make a habit of eclipsing you, of appropriating your merit, of considering you as a secondary actor. This is not fatality. It is the logical result of poorly mastered kindness in an environment where the winners are those who dare, who strike at the right moment, and who do not worry about offending. Hesitating to claim one's place is a major strategic loss. A project, a responsibility, an important discussion. Every moment you withdraw your hand out of an excess of gentleness is a moment when someone else takes control. And these moments, accumulated, shape an entire trajectory. While you remain discreet to please, others build their empire, reap results, and rise. While you remain in the shadows, admired perhaps, but never in power. Understand this clearly. Kindness is not the problem. The problem is kindness without strategy, which makes you a spectator of your own life. Learning to say no at the right time, to claim what belongs to you without fear, to dare to take the place you deserve, is to transform this kindness into a strength rather than a handicap. Mastered kindness then becomes a powerful tool. You choose when to show yourself gentle, when to withdraw, when to strike. And above all, you choose to never let your principles steal the opportunities you deserve. The eighth way is undoubtedly the most insidious, the most perfidious, the one that strikes when you least expect it. Kindness can plunge you into the most deceptive illusion there is. The illusion that human nature is noble, that everyone acts with the same sincere intentions as you. It is a subtle, invisible trap, because it only reveals itself when you are already engaged, invested, vulnerable. When you sincerely believe that everyone shares your values, you expose yourself to behaviors that surpass you. Some people will surprise you with their loyalty, their integrity, their cooperation. But others silently observe, evaluate, exploit. They detect your benevolence as a weak point, a half-open door, an invitation to cross the line that you thought impassable. It is in these moments that blind kindness can destroy you. You give, you forgive, you encourage, you listen, thinking you are creating alliances, strengthening relationships, consolidating trust. But some only see the opportunity. They meddle in your generosity, use you as a stepping stone for their own ambitions, drag you into invisible conflicts, manipulate you without you realizing it. The lesson is brutal. Kindness is not an automatic shield. It is not a sign of moral strength that protects against exploitation. It can be your Achilles heel if it is not accompanied by lucidity. The world is not homogeneous. It is not composed of sincere hearts and open hands. It is filled with shadows, silent calculations, hidden interests, and masked rivalries. The truth that you must engrave in your mind is simple, but relentless. Kindness alone does not protect you. It does not automatically elevate your status, does not forge your respect, and never guarantees the loyalty of others. It may seem gentle, reassuring, moral, but without strategy, it becomes a trap. The 8 ways in which kindness can destroy you are not abstract theories. They are daily realities that you observe in every office, every family, every social circle. They strike silently. They erode power. They prevent you from reaching your potential. Understand this well. Kindness is neither a right nor a shield. It is a tool. A powerful tool when wielded with intelligence, but a deadly weakness when left to chance or dictated by naivety. It can hide your strength. It can disarm the enemy. It can inspire trust. But it can also feed opportunism, destroy respect, bury you under responsibilities that are not yours, erase you from opportunities that others seize without hesitation. The secret lies in mastery. Never confuse kindness with weakness. Never let your desire to please, to understand, or to avoid conflict dictate your limits. Observe, analyze, anticipate. Be generous, but choose to whom and when. Be lenient, but always set clear boundaries. Offer your help, but without ever forgetting yourself or sacrificing your interests. Transform your kindness into strategic camouflage. Let others believe in your docility. Let them get used to it. Let them trust you. All while ignoring Yet behind this veil lies a calculated control, a reserve of energy, a constant vigilance. Look around you. Those who dominate society, politics, business, or even social circles are not always the hardest, the cruelest, nor the most visible. They are often those who master perception, those who know how to use kindness as leverage rather than a life jacket. They know how to wait. They know how to strike at the right moment. They know how to protect their power while giving the illusion of harmlessness. Thus, every act of kindness you perform must be conscious, thoughtful, and strategic. Your goodness then becomes a weapon, invisible but formidable. Your respect becomes indestructible because it is not born solely of kindness, but of the combination of benevolence and firmness, of generosity and lucidity. Remember, poorly mastered kindness destroys. Strategic kindness conquers. Never let naivety guide your actions. Be patient, observant, calculating. Transform apparent gentleness into invisible power. Because in this world, he who understands that kindness is only a potential force and not a guarantee of security becomes the one who leads the game, while the others play, ignorant, in the shadow of his strategy.